Welcome, everyone. We are going to call this meeting to order now. It is 6:41 p.m. on July 27, 2023, and this is a public meeting of the City of Portland Police Accountability Commission. If the Spanish language interpreters, Liz, can please give the information on the Spanish language interpretation?
Esta junta es una junta pública sujeta a las leyes estatales de Oregon y las reglas administrativas de la ciudad de Portland y será grabada. Habrá interpretación disponible al español. Para poder escuchar en español, por favor, oprima el icono del globo, luego interpretación y seleccione español. Continuará viendo la junta, pero escuchará al intérprete. Por favor, denos un minuto en lo que se habilita esta función.
Muchas gracias. The city also offers ASL interpretation, which is being provided by Christine and Mary. Please pin their video feed to see their interpretation throughout the meeting. The closed captioning is turned on the Zoom as another means of assistance. But please note that this is automatic captioning services and it is not always accurate. The city supports access to meetings of the Police Accountability Commission and can provide other language support as well. Please email in advance of future public meetings, either as a response to a public meeting notice or directly to Police Accountability at portlandoregon.gov to ask for other access assistance, including interpretation into other languages. This meeting is a public meeting subject to City of Portland Administrative Code and Oregon State Law and is being recorded. For this meeting, the chat function is enabled for commission members to communicate with each other. Members of the public will be able to ask questions using Zoom Q&A feature as the commissioners are presenting and or discussing things. If attendees have questions, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A. We hope to use this feature to help guide our conversation during the meeting and future meetings agenda topics. We'd like to be clear that no questions will be answered during the meeting, but if answered, both the questions and answer will be visible to you and will become part of the meeting record. To access this feature, just click on the Q&A icon on the middle of your screen. Please, if Commissioner Co-Chair Dan can do the next item on the agenda, that's the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to turn off my air conditioner here, if I can. There we go. So I'm Dan Handelman. I use he, him pronouns. I'm one of the three co-chairs of the commission, and this is the land acknowledgement that we use, which is the one that's in City Hall. It's not as strong as what I would say if I was writing my own, but this is what we're using. We acknowledge that the rivers, lakes, streams, and lands of the lower Willamette River rest upon the occupied territories of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Calumet, Clackamas, Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes. We recognize the many villages, traditions, cultures, and relationships that existed along the river since time immemorial. We recognize these tribes stewarded these lands and rivers since time immemorial for future generations. We recognize and undertake responsibility for the destruction of the river and land, of traditional food sources, sacred places, and multifaceted ways of life. We acknowledge the economic and social values that enabled the harm to the river, including systemic racism, classism, and other systems of oppression that perpetuated harm against Black, Indigenous, and immigrant communities along the river. With this acknowledgement, we commit to honoring and learning from the past and working towards a more equitable and sustainable future for the lower Willamette River. We commit to seeking solutions that acknowledge the inequities of past socioeconomic policies and the harm done to people and our relationships to these lands and waters.
Thank you, Co-Chair Dan. Now we will pass to review our community agreements before our meetings. I will remind everyone there are 3 pages for these community agreements. Thank you. And now I will ask the question, do we all commit to following the community agreements for today's meeting and gently calling our colleagues and collaborators if needed? And if I can see your hands. Thank you very much. Now I will pass it over to Co-Chair Sima to discuss the timeline.
Greetings, everybody. So as far as the Police Accountability Commission and its timeline, we've had to split our work into 6 phases, as you see here on the screen. You will see. And it's now we're in the final phase of the work. We're in the 6th phase of this work, which focuses on taking everything that was done in the previous phases and converts it into proposed changes to city code and settlement agreement. And it's gonna, and approving those for council consideration along with the report. So we work until the end of next month, August 31st. And we'll present proposals to the city council for their consideration and approval after it finishes meeting. So, yeah, right, slide. So our commission's, the outcome of the documents that the Police Accountability Commission is creating in this phase are going to include one, the code change proposal to the city council, the proposed amendments to the settlement the city has with the US DOJ, the settlement agreement, and the final reports of the Police Accountability Commission, which could include explanations and rationales for the legal text, recommendations for the board's bylaws or the Bureau's policies and recommendations to other levels of government, such as the City Council. This slide right here is the project plan for our concluding phase of the Police Accountability Commission's work. This slide is for members of the public to be able to understand how the commission gets from now through the end of the phase. The blue boxes are the public meetings, and the pink boxes below it are the consultations with the Police Accountability Commission's attorneys. Today's meeting falls into the blue boxes with orange border, or with the purple border, I should say. In this case, typically it's an orange border, located in the middle of your screen. Now, as far as the next slide, there we go. Following today, here are the upcoming meetings of the Police Accountability Commission that we would like to highlight. Next week, we're going to be holding public meetings on both Monday and Thursday from 7:15 to 9 p.m., which, you know, a little bit of reprieve. We get to start about an hour later than usual. So the PAC will also hold executive sessions from 6:30 to 7:10 on both days pursuant of this of our code, ORS 192.660. And then as you see, there's going to be a community information session on August 12th, which is in the orange on the screen right here. And that's from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And it'll be hybrid with, it'll be hybrid with an in-person location at Lentz Commons and a Zoom option. So if you know community in the Lentz area, or if you're willing to be able to travel just a little further distance, please come. And yeah, so today we're going to basically be reviewing several documents that might be useful in revising previous decisions and documents, such as areas of agreement documents. These documents include the final checklists of tasks, the community input tracker, the discussion groups report, and equity reviews and values and goals. as well as staff suggestions based off of gaps or contradictions or technical edits. And the legal review and consultations will be discussed next week during the executive sessions. Also, then there's going to be time to discuss proposed changes of the areas of agreement on access to information on board memberships. And prior to discussion on proposed changes, the commission will review, the Police Accountability Commission will review its own values and goals. After discussing, but before making a decision, the commission will hear public comment. And later today, we will have a discussion on whether or not the Police Accountability Commission would like to issue a statement about political changes to Charter 2-10, ballot measure 26217. And finally, we'll have general public comment.
Thank you, Co-Chair Sima. Now, our next item in our agenda, I'm going to pass it to staff to hear updates. Thank you.
Thank you. So first we'll do the community engagement update. Thank you to everyone who came out from the public as well as from the members of the commission to join either virtually or in person yesterday at the community info session, which was held in Southwest Portland at the Multnomah Arts Center. Coming up, there are several events and wanted to talk to them. One, the date has not yet been set, but there's going to be a youth-focused event open to the public somewhere between August 8th and 15th at McDaniel High School. On August 12th, which is a Saturday, there's a community info session from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. That's going to be in Lentz. And the third event is on August 20th. The time's not confirmed there yet, but it's going to be in Mill Park. So those are all coming up. They provide an opportunity for members of the public to hear the draft recommendations of the PAC in sort of a short presentation and to provide feedback as well as ask questions of both clarifying what the PAC is considering recommending, as well as asking why to commissioners or asking what the reasoning is and having a conversation. At this stage, there is a draft of the sort of focus and system proposal. It's not yet in legal text. That's happening in a minute. We'll talk about that in the second update. And at this point, members of the public can read that over and react to it and give feedback for the public, or sorry, for the members of the commission to consider as they work through the last 5 weeks of work, making revisions to their previous agreements and converting it all into a code recommendation for city council. So that is a community engagement update. I guess the only other part on that is that the community input tracker, the first draft of that is live, and we'll talk about that in the next agenda item, but it is also available online, so you can see all the input that community members have given so far, aggregated as well. So that's the community engagement update. Switching gears and talking about the legal consultations update. Legal consultations are focused on developing and converting text with the benefit of outside legal counsel and their expertise into legal text for recommendation to council as part of a code package. The 7 documents that are going to be integrated into the code package include the 3 from phase 3, which are access to information, officer accountability, and structural oversight, as well as the 3 from phase 4, which are board membership, oversight staff, and reporting and transparency, and one of the documents from phase 5, which is the broader system. The other documents are also going to still be integrated into the work of the commission going forward. They'll just be part of a different document, which is the final report. So for the 7 that are part of the code, there's legal consultations. Every one of them has been held now, or at least 8 legal consultation on every single one of those has been held. There's still a couple left to hold for documents that are just a little bit larger of a lift to work through. And that sets up the commission to be able to release a public draft of the code package, hopefully around next weekend, give or take a few days. So somewhere between the 3rd and 7th of August. Yeah, I will pass it back over to facilitators. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. Now we're gonna start reviewing the values and goals before discussing our documents. And I don't know, pass it to co-chairs or staff to review the values and goals document.
Sorry about that. Had a little difficulty unmuting again. So values and goals are something that the PAC agreed to in March of last year and agreed that they would look at before making any substantive decisions, including on areas of agreement, transition plan, and eventual code changes. Before we move to discussing documents, inputs, and more, the commission will review the values and goals and show them on screen. They're a 4-page document. As you can see, the first page is a summary of the importance of the document and what the 6 values are. And for each of these, there are a value with 1 or 2 corresponding goals and several considerations or success criteria. These are self-imposed standards that the PAC will use to evaluate its own work before deciding to send it on to the city council. Show it on screen and scroll through. Please note that the 3rd and 5th goals are broken up by a page break. So we'll try to show those all on screen before moving on to the next part. And then we'll pass it back to co-chairs. This is the end of the document. So I'll ask co-chairs, are there any specific values and goals you'd like to highlight for either the areas of agreement on access to information or on board membership?
Hi, Commissioner Charlie Michelle Wesley, co-chair, Police Accountability Commission. Just once again, I'd like to reiterate that it'd be nice to hear from anyone who was on either co-chairs or on the committees for access to information or board membership, if they might want to highlight some values and goals.
I think those were co-chairs Obi and Dan for access to information.
Commissioner Co-Chair Dan?
Well, I'm not hearing my previous co-chair speaking up, so I'll just say, transparency, I think, is the key to access to information. But I think that's on the next screen. Staff, transparency, and truth and trustworthiness. Yeah, I think that's the key to this that document.
And then for board membership, you have co-chairs over here, tier 7, would like to add anything.
Commissioner Obi?
Yeah, I think 1 and 5 are pretty good things. So equity and inclusion, as well as or for like a board membership, as well as like being community centered. I think we always kind of discussed those and choosing a board that's reflective of Portland and the community, and reflective of all different backgrounds too. I think those are ones to think about as we go over the document or go over our final document.
Thank you, Commissioner Obi. Commissioner Angie?
Yes, related, I appreciate what Commissioner Obi said about community-centered related to board membership. I also think that we really need to take a look or need to take to heart the transparency value and trustworthiness when it comes to I'm sorry, it's been a long day. The other document that we're looking at, the one having to do with data, not data, but access to information. So yes, we really, that is all what this is all about, is making sure our community members feel like this is a transparent process and that they trust that this process will work. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Angie.
Thanks. If there's anything anyone would like to scroll to, happy to scroll. Otherwise, happy to pass it back over to facilitators. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, staff. Now, next, staff will walk the PAC through the documents being provided to you, and then we'll have an open discussion.
Sorry about that. Thought it was next step here. So just I'll quickly talk about a couple of these and then might pass it over to a colleague to talk about when we get to the discussion group reports in a moment here. But there are several inputs into the documents that came up that were mentioned as part of the work plan for this phase of work. And start by facilitators could share, I want to say it's slide, it's towards the bottom, but the one with the 4 little charts in it. And yeah. Actually, it's slide number. Let's do slide number 49.
Sorry, which slide number are you wanting?
49.
49. It's not. Let's see. I don't. There you go.
That's the one. Yeah. So several input areas to discuss today, some of which are on their way to you as reading materials, some of which are drafts that have been sent and maybe updated, and a couple of which are final as well. So this is as it was planned originally in the work plan. That's evolved slightly. So the garden plot has been replaced by the final checklist, which we discussed last Thursday. Sorry, on Monday of this week, and which includes the garden plot items in it, just in a slightly different format. Council feedback, which is that letter from City Council on June 9th or memo post work session. Then there's a community input, which is the input tracker, which sort of draft version was sent your way and will be updated by Monday. Then there is the equity review, which includes the values and goals, and also will have a couple other component parts to it as well. One from equity advisors and the other from the Office of Equity and Human Rights coming up. And then there's going to be some staff suggestions, which are more focused on gaps, contradictions, but also citation updates and just standardizing language. A couple of which will need to be reviewed by the commission. I skipped over the legal counsel feedback because that's going to be discussed in the executive sessions next week. So the other 5 are all here. And there's one thing that is also not on here yet, but which is part of community input, and it's the discussion group reports. So the PAC has held, let's say, 11 discussion groups, and we'll talk about the first report that's come out from that to the PAC today, and there are more on their way. They cover different groups of people with subject matter expertise, lived experience, or from underrepresented groups, and the researchers wrote reports coming out of that, which included the recommendations from those members. Similarly, the community input tracker has from advanced public comment, live meeting public comment, and survey responses, the suggestions and recommendations from community members to the PAC. So all of that is coming from community and are all references that may come up or may be helpful to talk about. So, and most of these are things that may encourage you to consider if you would like to change the direction or update the text of areas of agreement or other documents you've already approved. With the exception of that first one, which is the final checklist, which is more, here are the questions that your documents and eventually code package need to answer, and a way of sort of identifying if those questions have all been answered or all the required reviews and consultations have been held. Any questions on that before we go into the actual content of these? Co-Chair Dan?
Yeah, so did you flag in the checklist items related to the 2 documents that we're looking at tonight to make sure whether we covered everything in those?
It's not, yes and no. It's not in that document, but those items have been flagged. And they were flagged in, I want to say they're in another document, which I'll pull up in a second. Just have to remember which one it is. Apologies. But yes, there are agenda and scope. Sorry, that's the document. So the agenda and scope document, well, actually that's a good place to start when going into those 2 reviews that are coming up in just a little while here. Again, later on in today's meeting, the PAC will have the opportunity to consider updating the areas of agreement on access to information and the areas of agreement on board membership. And before each, I can show the agenda and scope, which has the required contents for those particular documents. Does that answer the question, or at least, yeah. Any other questions on that slide? Okay, so yeah, thank you.
Thank you, staff.
So I
Now,
was sorry, was thanking
okay.
for the slide. Sorry. We'll go to quickly show the checklist one more time, and I'll take over the screen share if that's okay. And again, there are several places where these items have originated. And there's a tab for each of these. For those following along at home, this is all available on the website under the event page for today's meeting. Sorry, I'm just gonna, yeah. So there are the charter documents from Charter 210, the specific excerpts here, what has been answered and where it's answered. In some cases, it's, imposed discipline is determined appropriate by the board. The determining of appropriateness is across this entire document. There are particular sections that relate more to that, discipline and corrective action, for example. There's other cases where it's specific sections, and in some cases there are specific excerpts identified here. It should be noted that the Bureau of Human Resources is a required consultation, which is which is in the process of being scheduled. And similarly, the Office of Equity and Human Rights is going to be reviewing the documentation over the next, well, they've started, but they will continue over the next week and get that back to the members as well. And then there's obviously a ton of items which have been flagged in the garden plot, many of which we're just working on getting the citation figured out for. And many others of which are documented how they've been met in the past. So the goal of this process is to be able to identify for members what's left to do in the remaining weeks of the commission's timeline, and then to be able to allow co-chairs to help develop agendas that let you meet the different tasks and requirements from City Council for the commission. And again, this is, I've unfortunately I shared the old version of it, so the version posted online has a few more things in here, but just wanted to flag that. The next item is the community input tracker. And this is being updated as well. This is comments that folks have made, members of the community have made to the PAC. Some of them are qualified or categorized by different content areas down below. That is being replaced and revised. This is also available online. It has been updated. It has everything received through February and a lot of what came afterwards, but there's a couple gaps post-February. So that's being updated and will be presented to members by Monday. So yeah, and there'll be some charts and graphs and stuff that are being added as well to show when things came in and give a little bit more information as to the community input that has been received by the commission. Next on the list, and as we're going forward, some of these are going to have more content than others, is the discussion group report. So as mentioned earlier, there have been, I think it's actually 12 discussion groups, but they collectively, each one is getting, has a report that's being drafted, and we'll just kind of walk through what this looks like. And maybe it's a good time to pause here and say, there are a lot of things to read that are being created and come up here. Co-chairs have suggested a path forward that will ask a couple members of the commission to focus on reading each of these categories of documents, or read the whole document, an individual document if it's a larger one, and sort of report back on what the major takeaways are. Everything will be available to every member as well as to the public to review from these 5 of these 6 things that we just went over. And certainly, even if you're not the one reviewing and reading it over and reporting back, any member can reference it, talk about it. It's all open to the public. But to avoid asking everyone to read all of these, frankly, hundreds of pages that are coming, co-chairs suggested the idea that, member A and member B might look at this document and report back, and member C and D look at this other document over the next few meetings. So that's something that towards the end of the meeting today, during next steps, we'll take a minute and ask if there are volunteers and have a list of all the different things that might require sort of a member lead on that. Is that an accurate description, co-chairs, of what your suggestion is? Do you want to build out more on that? Seeing nods here. Thank you.
Unless anybody has questions.
Not seeing any questions yet. So the discussion group, the first report is finalized. There are several more that are in the pipeline right now, and many of them will be out by Monday. There are 2 that will take a couple days longer than that because they actually happened last night. And the remaining ones happened a couple days before that, or at least a couple days before that. And so those reports are being drafted. But this is the first one, which is final. And again, this is publicly available to you as well. So just kind of break it down here. Let me get the zoom right. So this was the first of these was done with Spanish speaking Portlanders. And this is just kind of a review of what it's going to look like. Table of contents, 5 sections. The introduction and methodology. Well, the introduction will largely be the same for each of these and explain what happened and all of the different steps in the process. Methodology is also covering that. I believe these might be updated a little bit based on each group and the specific methodology there. And specifically how many people signed up, how many people attended, and all of that. And then the findings include specific responses from folks, and this is where we'll probably just pause and let people read as we go, but I'll circle back to this in about 30 seconds. The 4th section is recommendations. These are recommendations, just to be clear, these are recommendations from the participants. They're not recommendations from staff or contractors. They are what the community members who took part in this said. And then the last step is some concluding information, which is a summary version of that in part. I don't know if anyone else who worked on this report or developing it had anything else to add, but I think that covers everything about it. And I'll circle back and let folks read this real quick, just as an example in a moment. Okay, so. Yeah. And as this particular group is Spanish speaking Portlanders, there are also quotes that are in Spanish and then translated as well, which is not going to be in all the other ones, but certainly in this one. We may move through this a little faster than each person might need to read every word, but the goal of this exercise right now is to get everyone familiar with the document and the types of things that you're going to read here. And as you may recall, when this was mentioned earlier, the goal of this process was to get detailed feedback and particular expertise and things like that. So. There's a section on each of the questions, and then getting down below to, just gonna, in the interest of time, kind of skip ahead a little bit. See a question from co-chair Dan?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking, and maybe I'm wrong, but that references to the Police Accountability Commission are actually things they want to see happen with the new board and the new oversight system, and not for us, because we only have a month left to do any of those things. Am I misreading that, or is that just like what they said, because there's some confusion still about whether we're in the new board or not?
I think the methodology of creating the report erred on the side of using the language that the the members of the discussion group used. I can clarify that and get back to you on that. But it seems there are things that refer to the oversight board using the terminology commission. And as you may recall, that's a thing that comes up pretty frequently sometimes. So just to clarify for those listening at home, this is the Police Accountability Commission. It is setting up the rules which the board will follow and which will cover the board. And the oversight board is what will actually be hearing cases and doing all the things that are talked about in the areas of agreement. Co-Chair Charlie?
Yeah, so I was wondering, at the beginning of these events, if they could clarify that, and is it okay now to start giving them the new name?
Yeah. So yes. There aren't any others scheduled. There's at present there's a chance that there'd be an event that kind of gets converted into a community engagement event from a group that wanted to do or suggested a location for one. But definitely able to send the name. You're welcome to circulate the proposed name of the board and the bureau.
And as well as the community engagements events.
Yes.
To start making that very clear, because it's kind of obvious that people are still thinking we're the ones that are going to be doing the oversighting.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate the feedback and the advice there. Okay, and so again, the purpose of today is not to spend the whole meeting reading, because as I mentioned earlier, there's a ton of pages of text to read. So I think a more valuable use of this time in developing the agenda from co-chairs was to essentially go over all of this, kind of give the opportunity for members to get familiar with it, and then to leave a space to talk about them and see if there's anything from any of these types of documents that may be relevant to you to think about as you pursue the next few meetings of revising documents and updating. So I'll pass it back over to facilitators at this meeting.
Thank you, staff. Now we'll let members discuss anything that come up today that you like to mention and discuss in the context of possible changing your previous decision on areas of agreement. Later this meeting, the PAC will have a chance to revisit the areas of agreement on access to information and areas of agreement on board membership. We ask you, we're going to slide 16. We ask you to follow our normal discussion rules. Please be brief each time you speak, even though you can speak multiple times. Please be facilitated and remember that we use a weighted stack in our discussions. Finally, please be forward-looking in your comments. Okay. I will pass it to co-chairs to get it started. To review and update the previous PAC agreements.
Is this a discussion about the documents we just saw, or the discussion of the documents that we're about to review?
The PAC will be revisiting 2 of the previous areas of agreement. And today we will focus on access to information and board membership.
Right, okay. So before we move on, I just want to make it clear that if you saw anything in the existing documents, either just now on the screen, or if you read them ahead of time and they made you think that there's something that in these documents we need to change, now is a good time to do it. It's we only have about 5 weeks left to finish all of our work. So the more we can get done ahead of time, the better. We'll probably end up revisiting these documents again, though, once we get the code back and start discussing that. So just so you know, we might this might not be our last iteration through these documents. So yeah, there's only a couple of recommendations, I think, that are actually written down for tonight. There's one that we made some suggestions on at the pre-meeting, but I'm going to try to propose some specific language to it when we get there. The staff, didn't you say that we had, you said there's this equity review, that we had an equity review provided by somebody from the facilitation pool that we might be using also, or is that going to be available on Monday, did you say?
Yes, sorry. There's sort of the equity review of the work has three parts. The part that happens every meeting is the values and goals review by members directly. Our contracted support for equity advice and training. It also took a look at some of the documents and is working on that, and that's being added to as part of the review by the Office of Equity and Human Rights. So there will be something a little bit more comprehensive on Monday to go through on that. I can, if it's helpful, can find the document that we have now, but it's kind of partial. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, thank you. And so I'm also seeing here in our notes that, so today, as you have heard a few times, I'll just say it one more time, we're looking specifically at access to information and board membership. And then on Monday, we're doing reporting and transparency and oversight staff. So if you have a chance to apply any of these ideas to those two documents before Monday, that'll help the discussion Monday go faster and make it so we don't have to necessarily revisit that document too many times as well. Is there anything else you want to add, either of the other co-chairs? Back to facilitator to lead discussion.
Thank you, Co-Chair Dan. Then we will go to our next item on the agenda, and I know it's an open discussion, but the PAC will be revisiting two of the previous area folk agreement each meeting until next Tuesday, and access on information and board membership now. We're gonna start the document review. And okay, you know what? It is almost 7:30. Let's take 5 minutes break. Let's come back before we start the review, and let's come back at 7:35. A short break. Thank you. Now we're ready to revise and update the two documents for the PAC areas of agreement on access to information. That we will start with that. I will pass it to the co-chairs for 1 or 2 minutes walkthrough of the proposed updates to the areas of agreement on the structural oversight. After that, we'll review the discussion. I'm sorry, for access to information. After that, we'll review the discussion guidelines and then start the full group discussion. Co-chairs?
If we scroll through this document, the staff will kind of go through one page at a time, I guess. You'll see that we start off with this definition of the Garrity warning. Then we have on the second page, we have a long introductory section. And then on the next page, we begin the substance of the document. The first part is about compelling testimony. I want to scroll down to section B. We have subpoena power, and then down to section C. We've got access to police records, and there's one thing in there we've got flagged to change. We'll talk about that when we get to it. Then in D, we'll just go through those individually when we get done. Just reminding everybody what's in this document. We have D is about data. We have let's go on to E, body camera footage. And I think that's the last section of this document. Is that right? We have suggestions about what to do with body cameras, which, you know, the pilot program is actually starting right about the same time we're wrapping up our work. So, so does anybody have? Oh, so staff, can you just kind of scroll quickly to that? Oh, you've already changed the screen. Can you scroll pretty quickly to that first paragraph that we have a plan to fix, which is in the compelling testimony. And so we're going to read that to you. We do have some specific text in that section too. So if anybody had already thought of something to put in here, now is the time to do it. I guess we're also going to be looking at the agenda and scope. Is that what we're doing now, staff?
Yeah, at your request, Co-Chair Dan, there was to look at what was supposed to be covered in this particular document. And that this document is the agenda and scope adopted by the commission in March of 2022, updated again in September 2022, and third time in March 2023. And it had all of the component parts that were from the different documents you asked about, so the charter, the council resolutions, et cetera. And so for access to information, the way that it was broken down included these two parts here, A and B under 3. And then when getting into that was sort of what was put into the access to information, records, and testimony. So the council resolution, and there are multiple council resolutions, but this particular one that was broken into the agenda and scope parts talked about how to clarify these. And so there's a little less guidance on this one than in the board membership one, as we'll talk about in a minute, but that's what was in agenda and scope. So yeah.
So how the board can receive and compel testimony and access to records and data within state and federal law, including subpoena power and access to police records. So those are that was the charge, basically.
And would you like to start with the compelling testimony part here, or a different spot?
Yeah, no, Co-Chair Michelle Wesley will read that. And then, like I said, if anybody else has stuff to add, please do it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Co-Chair Charlie, before we start with the discussion, we're gonna see to slide 21. We will now move to discussing the proposed changes to the PAC areas of agreement on access to information. As we go through, we'll address proposed changes from co-chairs as well as from other members received in advance. The subcommittee can also make new proposed text changes. After that, we'll move into the decision-making process on approving proposed changes. We ask you to follow our normal discussion rules. Please be brief if time you speak. Even though you can speak multiple times, please be facilitated and remember that we use weighted stack in our discussions. Finally, please be forward-looking into your comments. And now, Co-Chair Charlie, we can start discussing the document. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to read this in, can I have, yeah, there we go. So A9, and use of deadly force in death custody cases. Administrative investigators shall have the ability to compel testimony once either the criminal investigators have completed their interview or the officer has postponed their interview with criminal investigators. Co-Chair Dan had proposed a change to this. Do you want to explain any more on that, Co-Chair Dan?
Yeah, sure. So it occurred to me reading this paragraph again that right now, the officers in a deadly force case generally say, on the advice of my attorney, I'm not going to talk to the criminal investigators. And sometimes they wait until they're at the grand jury to actually go through the same equivalent of what they would talk to the homicide investigators about. But the administrative investigation is able to compel them to testify within 48 hours. And that's how things work now. And I think the way we wrote it could actually make that go backwards and make it so that they get a longer time to wait. So I think this language will encompass that. And I'm particularly going to ask Co-Chair Ogu-Oju if I've done anything to damage what we were planning in this document, but I think this will help make it not be, make things worse instead of better.
Commissioner Obi?
No, I think that reasonably, addresses like maybe a loophole that I overlooked. So yeah, it's like kind of abiding by that 48-hour principle that we're floating. So no, I don't disagree with editing A9.
Thank you, Commissioner Obi. Is there any more comments, questions, or edits to A9? No? Okay, I'm gonna ask the question. Is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to the new proposed change? Is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to the proposed change? Thank you. Can we move on? Yes, thank you. Okay.
All right, so I'm going to look at the next paragraph that we flagged because we didn't come up with a specific language, but I think I have something now, which is I think it was D7. Is that right? C7. Yeah. So right now it says the city shall ensure a discrete source of adequate funding in addition to that required for oversight board operations to fully pay for any fees the oversight board incurs when accessing information from a non-PPP source. My proposal is to say the board shall ensure shall set aside adequate funding in addition, and then cut out in addition to that required for the oversight board. So the board shall set aside adequate funding to fully pay for any fees the oversight board incurs when accessing information from a non-PPP source. I'm saying that for two reasons. One is that we've heard one of the most largest amount of pushback we've heard both from some community members and from elsewhere is about the budget of the board, which is, they're saying is relatively large and we know it may not be. So I think we should see if it can be paid for out of that money that's being carved out for the board and let them ask for more money if they need it, which is what we've envisioned in another document about the budget. And the other thing is that just the word discrete sort of seemed confusing to us when we were just talking about it earlier. So we thought set aside would be better language. Thanks.
Thank you, Coach Jordan. Commissioner Obi.
Yeah, I definitely remember this discussion as well. I think these edits are agreeable. I know that this is probably a rare occurrence of when non-PPP information will need to be accessed and will draw a fee, but it was just something to look out for, those small little things or what are generally overlooked. But I think this edit is absolutely fine. I think it goes along with kind of what the community wants to make sure that we are efficient with the money provided to the board in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Obi. Commissioner Sophia.
Yes, I had a question about this. My thought is, how do you know how much money you're going to need? That was one. I know it's a set aside, so you're talking about having a budget for that, but you don't really know how much you might need. So maybe we should just say funding will be available out of the board's budget or something to that effect, because when you say set aside, then you don't really know how big that budget is going to be. So I didn't want to have an incident where there's not enough money in the budget to do something. So that's my thought.
Okay, Commissioner Sophia, do you have a specific suggestions that staff can take?
So let me see. So let's see.
Do you want to think about it, and in the meantime I can ask, or do you want us to wait?
I'm just gonna mumble through it real quick and say that the board shall allot funding from the board's budget, something to that effect.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia.
Yeah.
And before I pass it to Co-Chair Dan, I will pass it to Commissioner Jumi.
Oh, I was just gonna say an alternative if we're trying to make this language give a little bit more flexibility is you could just change it from shall to may. But I don't feel strongly about it. I think Commissioner Sophia's option is fine as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Jumi. Co-Chair Dan?
Yeah, I appreciate both those comments. My comment was actually going to be that the supporting argument that we put underneath there probably needs to be deleted because it talks about ensuring separate funds, which is what we're trying to clear up here. So, and I think maybe we should say, shall allot funding from the board's budget, you know, with the best estimate available, something like that, so that to address Commissioner Glenn's concern. You know, using the best estimate available or something like that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Is there any more comments, discussions, or questions for C7? Yes, staff?
Just wanted to check from a grammatical perspective if it would be okay to move the word adequate up here for co-chairs to avoid the estimate available adequate funding. Does that work for both commissioners who proposed text here? I'm seeing nods.
Commissioner Sophia and Commissioner Jumi, is that work for you? They say yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any additional comment, questions, or edits? I don't see one. Okay, I'm gonna move to ask the question. Is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to all the proposed changes? Is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to all the proposed changes? Thank you. Can we move on to the next one? Okay, thank you.
I believe those are the only two recommendations right now that we have, unless there's, as I said before, unless there's anybody else from the commission that wants to recommend a change to this document right now. And we, you know, will more likely than not come back to it. And procedurally, I guess I should ask Facilitator Laura and staff, do we need to re-adopt this now, or should we just leave it in its semi-final form, knowing we'll probably come back to it when we get the city code?
It is something that either co-chairs or staff can answer. Yes, staff?
I think that's a co-chair decision, how you'd like to do it. Do you have a preference? Any of the three?
It seems to me that it's going to be very time consuming for us to go through and adopt this document one more time right now and then reopen it. So let's leave it as an open discussion, and then we can adopt it when we have more changes.
And let me ask you. Oh, go ahead, co-chair.
Just
Okay.
want to see if co-chairs agree.
Okay. Co-chairs Simab and Charlie agree to leave it open? Okay. Can we, co-chairs, can we go to, can I ask, can we move on and then go to our next item at the agenda? Because we don't have to go to, in a specific for this document, we don't have to go to public meeting now, to public comment now, since we're not gonna try to vote for it, correct? Okay, then thank you. Then we will move to the next item in the agenda, since we're not gonna vote in for it. Our next item in the agenda is to revise the updates to the PAC areas of agreement on board membership. We will now pass it to the co-chairs for 1 or 2 minutes walkthrough of the proposed updates to the areas of agreement on board membership. After that, we'll review the discussion guidelines and then start the full group discussion. Co-chairs?
So unless I'm wrong, and I'm sure the staff will correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have any specific proposed changes to the board membership document for tonight. Is that right, staff?
Just a moment.
But I would like to walk through it the same way we walked through the other document, just kind of show you what the document looks like, what the sections are in case it jogs your memory.
There were 2 flags for proposed changes, but they haven't been proposed. There were things that have come up in sort of, one in the case of a garden plot and one in the case of a transition plan, and both relate to training, which is section E, and you can choose to go there first or talk about it when we get there, however you'd like to address that.
All right, well, why don't we pull up the top of the document, we'll go through all the sections, and then when we get to the part that you're talking about, let's stop and you can tell us what we're dealing with. So when you're ready, here's the board membership document. There's our table of contents. Let's go to the definitions real quick. So there's quite a few definitions here, and I remember this conversation came up sometime in the last few days about the word law enforcement. I think it was in our last meeting, and this is where it is, right here, and it talks about police officers, corrections officers, prosecutors, county sheriffs, municipal police departments, university, state police, tribal police, law enforcement agents, the federal government, district attorney's offices, and correctional departments. So it's a very broad definition that we're using for law enforcement, and some of this comes from state law. Okay, and then we talk about the definition of oversight agencies as well. All right, so let's go down to section A. Or there's probably an introduction too. Let's look at the introduction. Oh, there is not an introduction. That's unusual. All right, so we have section A, which is about the size of the board and the size of the panels. This includes information about the alternate members. We scroll to the next section. I can keep going until we get to B. And this is about the qualifications and selection of the members. Okay, let's go on to C.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Got Dramamine over here. Okay, recruitment, appointment, and process. Recruitment and appointment process, including representation. And so we revisited some of this, I think, in another document that we were at, when we were going over the transition plan. Okay, but I don't think it needs to change, but I think we talked about it. All right, so then the next one, member support and compensation. That was one we spent a lot of time on. D. Okay, next. And staff, like I said, when we get to the part where you know there's something flagged, let me know. So then E is the onboarding process and training. All right, looks like that's where the flagging is. What do you got there?
There are 2 comments flagged, and I think if my colleague might be able to speak to the second one. But for the first one, there was a conversation during the transition plan conversation that as the transition plan document had trainings mandated for initial appointees to the board, that very first set of 33 members, that there needed to be a cross-check to make sure that the requirements there were also reflected in the general ones. Then some part of that may not be doable because part of the change in the transition plan is that there are no peers yet to do peer training in terms of, but there were, if there was any other changes was what was put into what was asked to be revisited. And then for the second one,
Right, yeah, so I have it in my notes that at some point the discussion of confidentiality had come up, and I know it is mentioned elsewhere in the documents that you all have come up with, but it was brought up after this one was approved that by Commissioner Catherine, that it might potentially be worth adding in something about specific training in confidentiality that board members would need to go through. And yeah, it was just a suggestion from late May, early June, I think.
Thank you, staff. So my suggestion would be then to put after letter B and make it the new C, because public records law is related to this idea, training on confidentiality. We're getting our track changes ready, okay. And in terms of the cross-check, I'm not sure how do you want to I don't know what's the best way to handle that, unless we're going back and forth to the transition document, or maybe we should handle that between now and next time this comes back.
happy to do it either way. I have the transition document pulled up if that's helpful.
Yeah, it kind of feels like it'd be better done between meetings, and then we can discuss it collectively once we have a chance to review it. And plus, there's going to be a review of the transition plan document probably between now and then.
And yeah, happy to do it that way for those who would like to review it between the meetings on their own. It is section, I want to say section C of the transition plan, C2 specifically. Yeah, C2. Thanks.
And co-chair Charlie, go ahead.
Yeah, I just, a question. So, okay, training organized by staff may be delivered by staff and or by experts and affected parties. Topic shall include at minimum. And then it says city training applicable to all members of city advisory groups. I mean, wouldn't that cover a lot of this stuff? Or should that be like a subtitle and then the other things listed under? I mean, it seems like confidentiality would be a part of public records. I don't know. It just seems like, I don't know what I'm trying to say here.
And
Well,
co-chair Charlie, maybe Commissioner Sophia has an idea or a comment about that. Commissioner Sophia?
Sure, thank you. Yes, Commissioner Co-Chair Charlie, I do understand where you're coming from. I know that Co-Chair Dan was talking about going over this again, so we can add that. Can we add that when we cross-reference that as well? To the transition document training is what I'm thinking. So I'll let staff go. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Commissioner Jumi?
Yeah, and I apologize. I wasn't quite following the coordination component of this, but I think one thing I might note about this is that I think all of these things are fine, and I think they should all be included in a training curriculum. But I do wonder, as someone who had to do this for the CRC, if this would be read as requiring discrete individual training modules for each of these topics, as opposed to saying, you know, a training course delivered by the city or by staff should include these items of review. so that they don't say, well, on Tuesday, you have to do your confidentiality training. On Wednesday, you have to do your public meetings and records law training. On Thursday, you have to do that. Like several of these things can be combined, and we can either combine them as items, right? Training on public meetings and public records law and confidentiality, or we could just, maybe add and include in there or something to that effect. Is that, Commissioner Charlie, I think your question might have been phrased a little bit differently, but that's something that jumps out at me reviewing this here.
Thank you, Commissioner Yumi. And before I pass it to staff, I will pass it again to Commissioner Sophia. Commissioner Sophia, you're in mute. I think Commissioner Sophia got frozen. Okay, at the meantime, I will pass it to staff and I will come back to Commissioner Sophia.
Thank you. Just to maybe provide one piece of clarification, that there are city trainings which all members of all city advisory groups, whether it's the noise review board or the citizen review committee or a budget advisory committee to a different bureau that's not related to this topic area, would all go through. And that does include a bit on public records and public meetings. That's true. There are unique public records laws that apply when it relates to employee and labor management, which discipline and corrective action falls into. And maybe if city attorneys would like to clarify that who are here, then happy to describe that or have you do so as the case may be. There's also public records, which public records related to public employees work a little bit differently than other types of public records. And there are unique rules around disclosure, not only for that, but even more specialized as it relates to public safety personnel. None of your staff is lawyers, so I just want to clarify, this is just reading descriptive things about it, but there may be some uniquenesses that are specific to the subject matter that this oversight board will be addressing. And that doesn't necessarily mean you should organize it any particular way, or not saying it's a good, not saying this is a good or bad idea, but just wanted to give a little additional context.
Thank you, staff. And now we'll pass it to Commissioner Sophia.
My apologies. As soon as I plugged in my computer, it was just a second too late. To get back, I missed a little bit of it, but I wanted to come back and say, I know Commissioner Angie and I were working on some of the more specific training. So that's why some of it is a little more specific than others. So it's not necessarily going to be the same type of training that you would get as from the city. And then also I'd like to include the other city training, because that can change over time. There are different requirements for training, and they will probably be updating those. And you'll probably have some additional ones or something added to some of them. So I think we should keep that as well. But as far as categorizing them, our thought, let Commissioner Angie pipe in on this, but our thought was that this should be covered. We didn't really think about how it should be modular, but this was just some of the types of training we thought that were very specific, that might be needed. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, before I pass it to the co-chair, I will pass it to Sarah Ames, and then we can go to Angie and then co-chair, Commissioner Angie, and then co-chair Dan. Go ahead, Sarah, welcome.
Hi, Sarah Ames, Deputy City Attorney. I use she, her pronouns. I just wanted to emphasize what Samir said. There is standard public meetings and public records law that applies to all public officials, including the members of this new board. And some of the exemptions that I think you will be interested in for the release of public information, personal information about public officials. So some of that information would be protected there's things that apply to the board, public meetings, public records law. There's also very specific public records exemptions and then specific laws, statutes protecting the confidentiality of some of the substantive records that you will be working on, including, protecting employee personnel records and protecting their personal information, protecting disciplinary records. There's also records about discipline, information that has to be submitted to the Board of Police Standards and Training. So I think you will need both of these. One that kind of applies to you all to the board members as public officials, and the other that applies to the substantive work in the records that you see in the course of your work. So I think they're both valid, and I'm just trying to emphasize what Samira was filling you in on.
Thank you very much. We welcome your input. Thank you and your information. And now I will pass it to Commissioner Angie.
Thank you. This is regarding number 1, training organized by staff, may be delivered by staff and or experts. I just wanted to reconfirm what Commissioner Sophia had said, that this list isn't all encompassing. It is at a minimum these trainings. So I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Angie. And now Co-Chair Dan.
Yeah, just to, as long as we're here and Commissioner Delgado has brought it up, why don't we say training organized by staff may be delivered by staff and or experts and affected parties and may be combined as appropriate.
Sorry, did you want that at the end of the first sentence or at the end of the second before the
At
colon?
the end, or after affected parties and may be combined as appropriate. Commissioner Delgado, is that all right? Capture your concern?
Thank you, Commissioner Jumi, and thank you, Co-Chair Dan. Is there any other comments, questions, or additions? Yes, Co-Chair Charlie.
I just wanted to thank everyone who helped clarify that. It makes a lot of sense. Just when reading it, it was not clear. So thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair Charlie. Any additional comments, questions for number 1? No? Okay, I'm gonna move to ask the question. I'm just gonna give a little bit of time to the staff to, finish, I think. I'm gonna ask the question. It's gonna move. Okay, for those 2 additions. Is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to the proposed change? Is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to the proposed change? Thank you. Can we move on? Thank you.
Forget what section we're in now, but, oh yeah, that was E. So then F is about the term length and renewability. Then we have G, which is removal requirements and process. And then is there another one after that, staff? H, internal process including quorum. And then that's the end. Okay. So, again, if anybody thought of anything that you want to change, add, or address, the better we do it now, then come back again when we're trying to do 500 things next week. But otherwise, we can just come back to this next week. And I suggest, again, Facilitator Larry, that we just table this and revisit it when we have more information.
Thank you. Yeah, we will do it. Is there any additional comments or questions, any of these areas of this document? Since we're not gonna vote on to approve this document, I'm gonna ask only, can we move on to the next item in the agenda? Okay, thank you. Since we didn't vote, we're not gonna have a public discussion on this particular document, and we're gonna move on the next item on the agenda. It is about potential statement on Charter 210. We will now pass it to the co-chairs to discuss the draft text for a PAC statement on Charter 210.
Yeah, I think I'll be taking that one on. So what we did is that we committed to creating a draft statement on Charter 210. And we put in some edits in this our draft form as we have it today. I'm not sure if who's going to screen share it or if I should be.
Just bear with me a moment, we'll get that up.
No worries. So yeah, this is pretty much a statement that we're going to be addressing to the mayor and the commissioners at the city council. Regarding the importance of this charter as approved by voters, and that is our subject line title of it. So yeah, so as we have it here, going to just do a reading for us over here. Here we go. No, not yet. Okay, there we go. Okay, we're good. No.
I'm now sorry.
No, it's all good. I'm just messing with you. Dear Mayor Wheeler and commissioners, the Police Accountability Commission is working to develop a proposal for an accountability system for Portland Police, which fulfills the mandate from ballot measure 26-217 given to us by the City Council in creating the commission. Until our work is implemented, we request that the text of the charter section 2-10 remain as written and as approved by Portlanders. The system we are designing reflects community concerns, simplifies and streamlines processes, increases transparency, respects officers' rights, and supports safety for all Portlanders. For the last year and a half, we have engaged in dialogue with community members, police, subject matter experts, and elected officials. Our calculations for the board to have enough staff to investigate roughly 400 complaints a year support a community board which will make findings on many of those complaints, analyze data, engage with community, and otherwise meet the needs which are not being met by the current system, which will take the entire amount of money being set aside in the charter. This includes needing office and meeting space for the board. As recent media reports have discussed potential changes to voter-approved charter text, the Police Accountability Commission is encouraged to hear from members of the City Council that they support implementing the will of the voters, and then evaluating progress before considering asking the voters to change their mandate to their local government. We agree enthusiastically with this process. We look forward to delivering a proposal to City Council later this year, which will include the details of the system that the voters approved and welcome input from Council and from all other Portlanders into our process.
Thank you, Co-Chair Sima. And before we go to discussion, we're gonna move to discussing the proposed statement. We ask you to follow our normal discussion rules. Please be brief. each time you speak, even though you can speak multiple times. Please be facilitator and remember that we use a weighted stack in our discussions. And finally, please be forward-looking in your comments. And I see already a couple of commissioners that would like to start the discussion. I will pass it to Commissioner Tim.
Thank you. I'm Tim Pitts. I use he, him pronouns. I had, to be honest, a lot of concerns when we were discussing this potential letter at our last meeting. And I think that this letter is really great. And I think I read it right before the meeting, and I think it really conveys the message that we are hoping to convey. And it seems appropriate and respectful. And I think y'all did a great job. So I have no suggestions for edits.
Thank you, Commissioner Tim. Commissioner Jumi.
Yeah, I kind of I think shared some of Commissioner Tim's concerns at our last meeting. But I broadly speaking, I have no objection to this process, and I think this letter does a very good job of addressing some of those concerns I think the two of us shared. One proposed suggestion I might make is that I think later this year is a little vague and also does not convey the alacrity with which we are nearing the end of this process. I think one of the biggest arguments for us taking a very amiable tack in this letter is that we're almost done, right? And it's not a huge ask to say you need to wait a couple of weeks for us to get this proposal in front of you, right? So I think saying something like, we look forward to delivering a proposal to City Council in a few weeks or very, very soon might emphasize the fact that this is a weird time to be sort of tinkering with the charter, given that the proposal we haven't come out with a proposal and we're about to in short order. So I think I'm not sure what the exact language should be, but yeah, staff is suggesting something. I think that's great. Just something that emphasizes this is coming so soon. There's no point in creating a proposal for a document or circumventing a document that you're going to see in a few weeks. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Jumi. Commissioner Sophia?
Oh, I thought somebody was before me, but also I would want to say, as we conclude our work will be, or just to say our work will be concluded. Just let's somehow say that by August 31st, we will shortly be finished with our work on August 31st, or our responsibility as a commission will be fulfilled by August 31st or something to that nature. So I'll just leave that out for everyone else to make comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Co-Chair Charlie and then Commissioner Debbie.
Right, I was gonna go to that same similar. We'll conclude our work on August 31st and then look forward to delivering a proposal to City Council shortly thereafter, or something, or mid-September, or something like that.
Thank you, Co-Chair Charlie. Commissioner Debbie?
I have a question about the second to the last paragraph. So were there commissioners then who have said that in the case of this particular ballot measure, that they support implementing the will of the voters and then evaluating progress? I haven't seen it. I'm just curious if somebody else saw that story along those lines. And then I could take the answer later. And then on that last sentence, I think it would be better to say, instead of saying we agree enthusiastically with this process, I would change process to approach. And then in the last paragraph, the last word, I would, instead of saying process on that one, also, I think I would change that to proposal. And maybe instead of into, it should be input from council and from all partners on our proposal.
Thank you, Commissioner Debbie. I will pass it to Commissioner Jumi and then Co-Chair Dan and then staff.
Okay, I just had a quick comment and answer to Commissioner Debbie's question. I think looking back on that work session with City Council for charter reform, I think Commissioner Rubio and Mayor Wheeler both spoke at some length about the idea that it's better to implement something and let it and then make corrections as needed. And I think in changing his proposal, Commissioner Ryan may have also said something slightly to that effect, although I'm speaking from memory, so I may not be 100% sure on that. I guess notably, Commissioner Rubio is also the one who has publicly raised the idea of adjusting the PAC's budget. So I think it's I think it should be a principle that we uniformly encourage, but that's my personal take. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Jimmy. Co-Chair Dan?
Yeah, so I think to fix that, it sounds like we heard directly from them. So I think it should say the police accountability is encouraged to hear that members of the city council support implementing the will of the voters. And then that way it doesn't sound like you had some kind of private conversation with us.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Staff?
So just to clarify how this works, the just a process note, two process notes. One, there was a preliminary discussion on Monday in which the commission proposed a position on this area, and then summarizing that, staff and co-chairs developed a draft. Co-chairs are proposing it now. The internal process document has sort of a process on how this happens, and then co-chairs are able to propose this document, which is what's happening here. One thing that was left, there is one thing coming up that after the content co-chairs may discuss that's sort of left open as a question to ask you. So we'll get to that in a little bit, but that's up at the top of the document. So just wanted to give a little context as to how this process works. Thanks.
Thank you, staff. Commissioner Sophia and then Commissioner Debbie.
I just was thinking about a wordsmithing where it says in that next third to the last paragraph, needs are not being met by the current system will take the entire amount of money. I would say the entire board allocation, something to that, the board allocation, funding allocation or something like that. That's just a little wordsmith. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Commissioner Debbie?
So I just wanted to thank Commissioner Yume for his recollection. I recall exactly the same thing, that there were several people on city council who were, when they were talking about the charter transition form of government one, they were like, let's see what happens and then talk about, once it's in place, then talk about changes later on. And so when I read this, though, I was not sure if somebody had said the same thing about 26-217, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Co-Chair Debbie. Is there any additional comments, questions, or edits?
I would invite our honorary Commissioner Young Baby Brown to offer any input if needed as well.
Okay, Co-Chair Sima. Before we do that, I will pass it to Commissioner Sophia.
Just another wordsmithing on that second to the last paragraph on the screen. The Police Accountability Commission is encouraged to hear, and I wanted to play support from the council members in implementing the will of the voters. So I just wanted to put support first, and we want them to ask them for support rather than we don't want to hear from them. We want their support. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Co-Chair Dan.
Yeah, I think it should be support for implementing, but those are all great. I'm really excited that we've been able to work on this all together. And if anybody else has another thought before we go to the vote, please feel free to jump in. But right now I'm going to address what the staff was alluding to, which is if we scroll back to the top of the document, there's a header that says to Mayor Ted Wheeler and Commissioners Renee Gonzalez, Mingus Maps, Carmen Rubio, and Dan Ryan. And it's titled Re-Importance of Charter Section 210 as approved by voters. And then it says, Dear Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. And the reason these are still in track changes is that technically speaking, what it says in our community engagement document is that we are allowed to make statements, but this is more of a letter, and we are opening it with a little friendly dear to the mayor and commissioners. And so I think we might need to have special dispensation from the commission to add that header and the salutation. And I personally would like to say at the end, we should probably say signed the members of the Police Accountability Commission, so it's clear it's coming from us.
Thank you, Co-Chair Dan. Is there any questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Jumi.
And apologies because this is my first time interfacing with this kind of discussion. So I don't see any fundamental difference in making a statement versus drafting a letter. I think they accomplish the same public aim. So I have no objection to that. I do think I guess that perhaps trying to think of how to phrase this. I know that on the Charter Commission, there was some discussion about certain minority opinions, people wanting to make their stance clear. And so I guess I would hope that if there is anyone in this body, it doesn't seem like there is, but if there is someone who does not feel comfortable appending their name to this letter, that we make sure that there is space for them to do that if someone raises an objection when we get to calling for a consensus. So just flagging that. I personally feel great about this. I'm gonna vote aye, but if someone doesn't feel comfortable with this course of action, I would encourage them to speak up, and maybe we can figure out a way to not append not append their discomfort to this letter. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Jumi. Is there any comments or additional edits?
Well, I want to appreciate Commissioner Delgado raising that concern. I think it's really important. I also want to acknowledge that there's at least 4 people from the commission who aren't here right now, and so we are about to make. I think we're about to make a decision without them being present. But I think we're safe to say members of the Police Accountability Commission, because it'll be voted on by by a majority of us. And then if later they feel uncomfortable about it, they can write a follow-up dissenting letter. But they're not here for the discussion tonight, and we can't really do anything about that. But again, as Commissioner Delgado said, if you are uncomfortable, feel free to speak up. Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair Dan. Is there anyone present here that's feel uncomfortable? Okay, then I'm gonna ask the question if there's no more comments, edits, or suggestions. Okay. Yes, Commissioner Sophia.
If you scroll down, I wanted to, when we say we agree enthusiastically with this approach, and are we referring to the beginning of that paragraph? Okay. All right. That's it. Is that what you're trying to show me, staff? With the highlights?
I think that's what the intent was, to reflect that, but co-chairs can speak more of it.
I just thought it could be vague as to what approach you're talking about. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. One of the co-chairs, would you like to comment about this?
I have a suggestion, this is one of the reasons I don't like using the word this and that. I think Commissioner Glenn's quite right to latch onto that. How about we agree enthusiastic with this wait and see approach? Does that cover what we're trying to get at, Commissioner Glenn and everybody? I can't see everybody's face right now.
A lot of
Yes.
people agree
Yeah,
with
I saw lots of agreement.
co-chair. Yes. Thank you. Before I ask the question, I will pass it to staff.
And just wanted to make clear that if this is in fact approved by the commission today or at any point, it would be, reformatted and sent off just by staff with the note that all the notes that you've noted. I shouldn't say the notes you've noted, all the things that commissioners have noted implemented here. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, Co-Chair Dan?
So before you ask the questions, I would like to add, since we said dear at the stop, I'd like to suggest we send at the bottom signed members of the Police Accountability Commission.
Thank you, Co-Chair.
Can we say
Yes.
this?
Commissioner Aja and then Commissioner Sophia.
Yeah, I mean, I like the wait and see terminology, but I was also wondering if it was possible to maybe do something a little bit stronger, like we agree enthusiastically with this trust the voters approach, or like trust the process approach, because it's not just about waiting and then seeing what's going to happen, but about like actually trusting the will of the people and implementing that, right? That's kind of what was being referred to in the previous thing.
Thank you, Commissioner Aja. Commissioner Sophia?
I'm sorry, I busted in there. I was thinking respectfully, just making, since we had a salutation at the beginning, maybe we should put one at the end as well. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Any additional comments or edits? Okay, I will ask the question then. Is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to all the proposed changes? Is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to all the proposed changes? Okay, thank you. We are going to move on then to the next item on the agenda. Oh, yes, Commissioner Debbie.
I don't know if this qualifies as a decision, but should we have asked for public comment?
This doesn't require to ask for public comment, but on the next item on the agenda, we're gonna ask for public comment. Okay,
Okay.
let me see.
Oh, I'm just waiting for.
Okay, now I'm gonna ask for approving the document as a whole. Thank you. I'm gonna ask, are we approving this? Is any opposition to approving this document and sending this letter to the commissioners, to the city council and the mayor? Is there any opposition? Is there a general agreement to approving this whole document as a whole and sending this letter to the mayor, and the city council. Okay. Thank you very much. This statement is approved. Okay. Now we're gonna pass to general public comment. We will now take open public comment on the issues the PAC is discussing, or community members can also tell their story about policing and police accountability. We ask members of the public to keep their comments or questions to 3 minutes in length and raise their hand in Zoom if you like to speak. We now invite comments for the public.
I currently don't see anyone raising their hand. I did see Dr. Silver at one point, but I don't see them anymore, so.
Oh yeah, there is one hand. I'm
Okay.
gonna thank you, facilitator Ayomide. I'm gonna ask Dr. Rochelle Silver to start with a comment, and thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you for letting me speak. I actually raised my hand and then lowered it because I thought I could say something before you voted. And now that you voted, what I want to say has no purpose, but since I already raised my hand, I'll say it anyway. Totally just my personal opinion. I think your letter is wonderful. However, maybe I'm just a more cautious person than you all are, and I feel like possibly you're poking a sleeping bear, and it makes me nervous. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Silver. We really appreciate your comment and appreciate you're here. Thank you. Co-chair Dan?
Can let Commissioner.
Commissioner Yumi first, yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if that's what Commissioner Dan was saying. I just wanted to thank Dr. Silver for their comment, and I share that concern. I think Commissioner Tim kind of echoed a similar sentiment. I do feel personally that this letter is mild enough in its tone to hopefully avoid making that level of discussion more fractious than it needs to be. I do share, like I said in the last meeting, I wonder if this is necessary, given that I think it's unlikely that a ballot measure is going to be proposed before the filing deadline for November, and that gives us a lot of time to discuss about something coming in the spring. That being said, there's been a lot of comments. There's been a lot of comments about PAC. There's been a lot of comments about some of the other issues that are in front of City Council right now. And I think that's what ultimately persuaded me to support this. I don't think I would have stood in its way, but I think that's what ultimately persuaded me that this is a fine course of action. Especially, like Commissioner Rubio, I think, had some great things to say about charter reform, but then in the same breath, also is talking about adjusting the budget. So I do think it's worth encouraging council to keep to that same principle. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Jimmy. Co-chair Dan?
Well, actually, Dr. Silver's comment made me think that, when we're talking about this with the co-chairs, we picture this as an open letter. I mean, it is addressed to City Council, but we want the community to know that we've written this. So we didn't explicitly say, and I don't know if it's in the communications rules, but I would like to propose that this letter be sent out to our full list and to the media, and so that everybody knows that we sent it. I don't know what people think about that, but I think it would be good to get it widely distributed.
Thank you, Co-Chair Dan. Commissioner Yumi?
Sorry, I think this is the last time I'll speak tonight, but
Oh, don't worry,
Um,
don't worry.
that I guess I did wonder about that when we were proposing sort of a rules change to send this out. I don't mind sending it to council. If we are concerned about tone, perhaps it should be made as a statement and just speak to council in some level and say, you know, we feel this. We are stating this publicly. We encourage council to do X, Y, Z. I don't think that's necessarily a big lift to do that. And if there's any discomfort with anyone on the board or, you know, speaking to Dr. Silver's concern, perhaps a publicly facing statement is one way to take the commissioners out of the hot seat a little bit and not make it feel like we're scolding them or lecturing them or whatever. We're just, you know, adding our opinion, you know, as a friend of the court. So I think that's not a bad idea. I'm okay with it either way, but if someone else feels strongly on that, that could be something we could consider.
Thank you. Commissioner Sophia?
Just a comment along those lines, with Co-Chair Dan and Commissioner Yue. Because there's so much in the media about it, I think letting the voters publicly know that we have heard that and that we want to support, we want to let the public know that as a commission, we heard that and we want to continue to provide or work for the voters to provide what they had voted for to our community. So I think it's a good thing. I kind of went back and forth, but I just think because it's in the media so much and based on our community engagement, people really want to know what we're doing. You know, that's the comment we get. What are you guys going to do for our community? Right? It's the first thing they say. And if we are silent in that, they're going to say, well, it's just like everybody else. I mean, we hear that all the time and nobody ever does anything. So I think it's a good idea. That's just my comment in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Commissioner Angie?
I agree with both Commissioner Sophia and Commissioner Yumi in that I guess after, you know, taking a second blush of this and thinking about it and thinking about how the city council is bringing these things up right now, that possibly not addressing it straight to them, but having it as a statement would be more effective. And I like the idea of us standing on our own that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Angie. Commissioner Tim?
Hi, yeah, thanks. It's an interesting conversation because I actually have personally the opposite perspective, because I guess I feel like if we just put out a statement, then it seems pretty obvious that we are speaking to city council. And personally, I feel like it's more respectful to address it directly to them, since it seems like the point of what we're doing is trying to address them. So I think that addressing it to them is actually a more respectful way to go. And I don't know that it makes much of a difference in the long run, honestly, but I'm happy with it how it was.
Thank you, Commissioner Tim. Co-Chair Charlie?
Yeah, so I'm wondering, will this be somewhere that community will have access to it if they wanted to see it, read it, know that we responded?
Thank you, Commissioner Co-Chair Charlie. I will pass it to Co-Chair Sima.
Commissioner Michelle Wesley took the words right out of my mouth. I had the same sentiment, which is, you know, I do see the value in which is being brought up by Yume and Sophia. I fall more on along the lines of what Commissioner Pitts just spoke of, but I do see the balancing act, and my question it would be in taking that. That's what drove my my thoughts into what Commissioner Michelle Wesley had just said, which is, you know, and the reason why is because I want to kind of know, like, okay, yeah, if we put this out, typically when you write to the mayor and commissioners, you send a statement to them. But if you send a statement to them through the press publicly, then it's a bit of a slap in the face and it's a little bit disrespectful. So how are we doing this? I do agree the fact that we do want to be able to address the mayor and the commission, the commissioners in the city council. However, this is something that we do want the public to be able to read and understand, and since we're speaking on behalf of their will that brought us here.
Thank you, Co-Chair Sima. I will pass it to Commissioner Fate and then staff.
Yeah, good evening. I tend to agree that the way that we've approved this and thought through it has been in letter format. And I also feel it's appropriate to share. And, you know, I know that we have a newsletter, so this could go in our newsletter. And I know that we have community engagement events and we could present this at our community engagement events. I know many of you are active on social media, so I just think that there are a number of ways in which we can share this openly on Reddit, on whatever the new Twitter is called, all the different ways. So I guess I'm stating my preference to stay the course with this remaining a letter and for us to share it openly and publicly through the channels we would normally share anything.
Thank you, Commissioner Fate. I'm gonna pass it to Co-Chair Dan and then staff, and I just wanna make a time check. Is 8:52, and also after staff, I think Co-Chair Dan lowered his hand, but after staff, I will need to ask the question for the suggestion on Commissioner Yumi, sorry. Okay, Commissioner Yumi, and then Co-Chair Dan, and then staff, and then I will have to ask the question.
I think I'm persuaded. So if someone feels strongly about wanting to change after what Commissioners Tim and Seema and I think Commissioner Fate said, I would encourage them to do so, but I think I'm satisfied. So if I can withdraw that suggestion, I'm happy to do so, and we'll save ourselves a little time tonight.
Okay, we will withdraw your suggestion. I will pass it to Co-Chair Dan and then staff.
All right, well, I'm still trying to find a compromise for people who have slight unease, and here's my suggestion, that staff will send it to City Council, and then the next day, they will send it out to our list and to us as it was sent. And that way, City Council has an entire day to read it before they see it come back to them through social media. And that way we're not, you know, having them read it about it in the press before they get a chance to read it themselves. I hope, does anybody think that that's an okay idea? Just let staff send it to City Council and then next day say, yesterday, the PAC sent this letter to City Council.
Thank you. I will pass it to staff.
Kind of, it's funny. I was gonna say something pretty similar to that. I think a general practice is if it was issued as a letter, it would be sent to the person that it's sent to, whatever that that group would be. And then if it was also to be open, usually there would be a little delay just to allow them to read it first. On the flip side, if it was issued as a statement, it would also be just as probably as a courtesy, a little note, dear members of council, the PAC issued this statement, you know, and it's being provided to you, it'll be issued tomorrow, and then it'll go up. There's either way, it would be sent respectfully to the relevant parties, and then also posted for the public if that was the goal of this, which this process does say a statement, so it would be designed to be public. So either way, it would be that way. It's just a question of how you want to frame it. And so, yeah, no need to worry there. It would definitely be something that the public could see very easily from the PAC website, as well as that it would go to the applicable people, in this case, City Council.
Thank you. Since the motion to make changes to what was already approved is withdrawn, I will ask the co-chairs before if we can move on with this.
Well, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So are people okay with staff sending this with the dear commissioners signed, sincerely or respectfully from us to the city council, and then the next day we share it with the community and the media? That sound okay? I'm seeing some heads nodding. So, okay, at least the co-chairs are agreeing. I can't see everybody. Thank you.
Everybody is agreeing. Thank you. Okay, co-chairs, one of you want to read the question that is from the public, or you want me to read it? It's up to you.
I'd be happy if you would read that into the record.
Okay, I will read the questions. It says, as a member of the public, I think the PAC letter will encourage the public to support the ballot measure they approve and to not let special interest groups undermine their vote. It also encourages our election representatives to not go against the will of the public. Thank you. Okay, it is 8:56. Can we move on? Yeah. Okay, now is next steps. And the first part of next steps is member curiosities, and I will pass it to the co-chairs.
We didn't talk about who'd do this, but I did it last time, so I kind of remember it. So this is a member curiosities where you can ask a question, or you can raise something that you have, just want to share with everybody. We're going to keep it to a minute per person and only have a couple of people talk, so because we're already running into the 9 o'clock hour. But if you have a question that can be answered tonight, we'll answer it tonight. Otherwise, we'll take it back and bring it to the next meeting. So anybody have member curiosities? Thank you.
Yeah, please, if anybody has a member curiosities, please raise your hand. I don't see anybody. Okay, co-chair Sima, go ahead.
Like I had a thought and I lost it. I was actually sitting on it earlier and I was going to write a note about it. It was in reference to something that we were working on earlier.
Co-chair, I can pass it to Commissioner Sophia and you may remember. Okay, Commissioner Sophia.
I want to say I'm smiling very hard at us. I am so happy about that process that we just completed. I am so encouraged hearing from everyone, whether they agreed or disagreed and explaining why. I think it just made our letter stronger, and I think it made our whole presentation as a commission wonderful. I'm just happy. It's not a curiosity. It's just like me wanting to smile at everybody. So thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Co-chair Sima, do you remember?
Yeah, I do. It's a miracle. I just wanted us to kind of think about, what we were talking earlier in one of our documents about, acknowledging as part of our trainings, the history of policing. And I want us to be able to understand exactly, like, imagine and maybe even resource ourselves as to exactly what are we referencing, where is this information, or does it need to be improved or compiled? But I think that's a very important thing to be able to come out from our board, and to be able to try and think about the different systems, partners, and information to kind of consolidate in regards to that. So I'm curious as to exactly how we would acknowledge that in training, and I want us to think seriously about it. That's it.
Thank you, Co-chair Sima. Very important. I'm glad you remember. Now we'll pass it to Commissioner Faith and then Co-chair Charlie.
Yeah, hi, good evening. I am excited and reflecting and just, yeah, it's feeling some gratitude as we're nearing the end, and would be really happy to plan a celebration for us. So if folks are interested in that, I'm happy to be a coordinator of celebration. I know we have differing levels of comfort with in person, and so perhaps we can do something outside with masks on, or gauge folks' comfort level. But I would really enjoy when we get to the end to be able to celebrate together with just the huge volume of work we've accomplished. Oh, Austin is working on it. God, what a genius.
Thank you, Commissioner Faith. And Commissioner Aje is also suggesting Enzima wants to have a cake. Anyway, Co-Chair Charlie.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that was something I really was hoping for. But I also wanted to show my appreciation and gratitude for public comment, the folks that show up here and give us input that's, to me, so invaluable. Yeah, just thank you. I'll say to my language, hayumasi, many thanks.
Thank you. Okay, then if it's nothing, I will, okay, staff.
Just one thing we flagged earlier in the meeting, that there would be a bunch of reading coming up, and there's some things which perhaps everyone should read, but there may be some other things where it might be helpful to have some members sort of take the lead and report back on. So in looking at that slide that we shared earlier, and this is sort of falling under next steps at the end, outside of member curiosities within next steps. There's sort of the final checklist, which would be everybody, and the community input tracker, which would probably be everybody as well. And that there's a new version that's going to be out on, you're looking for 49, I think, slide 49. This is all from June 15th, by the way, which is why there's been some updates subsequently, and we'll get a new set of slides for the future. But there are some other things which are gonna drop in the chat, and maybe members who are interested in taking on, trying to get it to fit here in the chat, I think. Members who are interested in taking some of those on might be helpful to, it might be helpful if folks wanted to volunteer to take that on. So I'm gonna just post them in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you, staff.
And feel free to just respond in the chat, and you can make sure to capture that before you go. And if the numbers are a little weird, you might want to resize your chat to make it read, because it's a little bit, there's a lot of text. So
Thank you. Again, staff is asking for if somebody from the commissioner wants to take the lead on reading these documents and revising them. And Co-Chair Dan say, I'm hoping the couple of people who volunteer for discussion groups can read them all and summarize them. Yeah, there is gonna be one full report from all the discussion groups for the 11 discussion groups with the affinity groups that were participated. Okay, is there anything else for next steps? Thank you, Commissioner Faith, and you can continue putting on the chat. What would you like to divide and conquer all together? Okay, then I will follow with the next item on the agenda. There is a garden plot recap. There is a time for facilitators, co-chair, and staff to summarize any items already brought up today which didn't fit into today's agenda. We'll recap those items here and use them in developing future agendas. We won't be using this time to add new items. not previously mentioned, or to discuss any items, but we will use this list to develop future agendas so these items can be addressed. Co-chairs, do you have any items for the garden plot?
Yeah, I just want to, in terms of this volunteering, blissfully, after this week's attorney-client meetings are over, there's really, most of the work is going to be done in our main meetings, and we don't have subcommittee meetings. And I know we've all put in a lot of time, and we have community engagement events coming up a lot too. But I'm hoping that people will volunteer for these readings and summarizations in lieu of the fact that we don't have subcommittee meetings that you have to go to. So just thinking about that, and I see some people are already putting their names down. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, anything about another co-chair for garden plot? Facilitator Ayomide?
Nope. No, nothing for me from the garden plot.
Thank you. Staff?
The only thing I'll mention is that was already in it, and we kind of brought it out and then said we'll wait a little bit longer, which is cross-checking the transition plan training requirements to make sure that the board membership document reflects all those, and there's nothing in the transition plan that isn't also in the board membership. So that we can do on, it looks like Monday or Thursday, and the PAC can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Then as a reminder, you can submit advanced public comment to the Police Accountability Commission via web form, voicemail, or postal mail. Thank you to all the members who attended today's meeting and for your contributions. Thank you also to the interpreters for making this meeting more accessible for all. And finally, thank you to the members of the community for attending and contributing with your thoughts and questions. If you're not already signed up for email updates, please also sign up to receive updates from the PAC. The next meeting on the Police Accountability Commission is Monday, July 31st. The executive session held pursuant to Oregon ORS 192.660 is from 6:30 to 7:10 p.m. and the public portion of the meeting starts at 7:15 p.m. Let me see. Okay. It's now 9:08 and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.